Hello there, I am Dr. K. Paul Stoller, and this video is about honesty in romantic relationships and how to stay honest without undermining a very precarious situation. What is this very precarious situation? It is called the female happiness paradox: more opportunities, but less joy. Some of this is genetic, such as having a double mutation on one's oxytocin receptor genes. Those with this polymorphism are almost always depressed, bitter, and unhappy. For some, it may be a poor relationship with their father or a mother who modeled being quarrelsome. But whatever the reason, roughly 30% of American women are chronically unhappy, and most men simply do not have the skill set to negotiate honest, authentic communication that would navigate this level of dissatisfaction. So as a rule, men become less communicative as a dysfunctional way of preserving the peace in the relationship. Men require respect even more than sex, and the last thing a man wants to do is electively say something that could cause his woman to lose respect, such as saying something that comes off as too vulnerable. To maintain a healthy long-term relationship, honesty is not just the best policy, but the only policy. In fact, one of the exercises couples can do together is take 5 minutes every day and share the feelings they are feeling without interruption. One day one partner does this, and the next day the other partner, and then this rotation continues every single day. In another video, I address the reluctance men have in sharing their authentic feelings with their partners because of a legitimate concern that sharing fears or uncertainties will subconsciously set off alarms that will cause a feeling of unsafety or disrespect. Those feelings then set off a cascade of hormones and subconscious choices that will often destroy their romantic connection. This is not male paranoia. This is a non-trivial problem. And men have a legitimate reason to believe if they are completely honest about feelings, the relationship will end. Now, with so many of us lacking a moral compass and controlled by our egos, if honesty ends the relationship, then maybe it needed to end. But all is not lost. The practice of regulated disclosure is a skill set today's men need to acquire to communicate with their spouses. Given what I've just disclosed, the discipline and practice of sharing one's feeling must pass through a filter that modulates any emotional sharing that might trigger fear or dissatisfaction in their partners. One just has to assume those feelings of unsafety and dissatisfaction are there even if buried under the surface. If 30% are chronically unhappy, what percentage are acutely unhappy on a regular basis, just not all the time? So, you can guess it could be well over half the female population. I am not picking on the ladies. It is just, there is substantial evidence women in our society are not happy campers. Disappointment leads to disagreements, and that leads to disrespect. Okay, what are some of these communication ground rules when disagreements arise that both parties need to agree upon in advance? First, stay in the present and don't bring up the past. Second, no threats or ultimatums of ending the relationship. Third, respect. No name-calling or being disdainful of your partner's character. Fourth, if things get too heated, you take a time-out or breather until calmer heads prevail. Fifth, keeping disagreements or challenges private. They don't get spread to social media or third parties. Express needs, not complaints. It will take a new skill set that most men do not have to be authentic and honest with sharing their feelings and at the same time filter what they are sharing so as not to set off fight or flight in the subconscious minds of their partners. Because once fight or flight kicks in, even subconsciously only pathos will follow. At best, men can only hold frame and boundaries in these situations because even a perfect man cannot make anyone else happy. You can give someone pleasure for a finite moment or two, but you can't make them happy. One's happiness comes from one's own perceptions and points of view. Our mindset is ours and ours alone, and will be with us wherever go, and with whomever we are with. Sure novelty and external validation from outside one's committed relationship will provide a temporary pulse of oxytocin and dopamine, but that is the chemistry of attraction, and it is very ephemeral. This is why authentic romantic relationships are a discipline that need constant maintenance. As if you had a car, you have to change the oil filter every day. This is why many are not candidates for a healthy long-term relationship. They simply don't have the skill set nor the motivation to obtain that skill set. I mean, if you had to change the oil filter of your car every day, would you still want a car? I think not, and yet this is the level of maintenance required every day to have a healthy relationship or realize you have an oil leak. In the past, romantic relationships were maintained out of necessity, if not survival, but that is no longer the case in a time of freedom and options. It almost seems like men are between a rock and a hard place on this, as in how many men actually have the emotional intelligence to pull off regulated disclosure without stepping on an emotional landmine. It is possible, but it takes predictable rituals, skill building, and shared rules, not just good intentions or hope. Honesty is morally desirable, but human nervous systems aren't neutral receivers in sharing one's feelings. A raw expression of fear or scarcity can, unconsciously, trigger a partner's protective circuitry, freeze, fight, flight, which then shuts down connection. So the problem isn't honesty versus lying. It's unregulated disclosure versus regulated disclosure that preserves safety. Treat emotional disclosure like any high-stakes conversation. Set context, give permission, limit scope, reassure, and end with a next step. I call this the Safe Share Protocol. The Safe Share Protocol's 5 steps. 1. Ask permission. Can I share something I'm feeling for 5 minutes? You ask even if you have an established plan to do this sharing every day. You ask as if there were no prearranged plan. 2. Label and limit. 1 feeling, 1 short sentence. No rumination. I'm feeling nervous about cash flow this month. This makes me feel insecure, but I don't want you to worry. We have savings and a plan. I did this with mothers in my old pediatric practice. If there was less than stellar news, I had already made arrangements for testing and specialists before I made the announcement. Ask for what you need. Now, hopefully, the rules for these feeling disclosures are already in place and agreed upon. 5 minutes max of no interruption. This structure reduces the opportunity for fear to develop, shows agency, and reduces a partner's imagined catastrophe. If the 5-minute daily ritual feels risky, try these lower-risk alternatives daily. 1 good, 1 worry check-in. Each partner shares 1 minute max, 1 win and 1 small worry, plus 1 specific reassurance. Keeps honesty but keeps scope narrow. Weekly deeper check-in. 20-30 minutes once a week for bigger topics, with the Safe Share Protocol rules. Letter or voice note first. Write it out, then read or hand it over. This lets you filter and practice tone. Emotional literacy, name feelings, anxiety versus anger versus shame. Practice with short lists, reassurance language. Train 2 or 3 go-to phrases that soothe, for example, "We'll handle it, I'm on this," "We're safe for now." Co-regulation, 60-second breath, a touch, or a grounding phrase before, after disclosure. Solution focus, always pair a feeling with a next step, even tiny, to reduce imagined helplessness. Honest disclosure will trigger threat or connection systems depending on context. Permission, plus limits, plus reassurance skew the interaction toward oxytocin, co-regulation, rather than fear reactivity. In plain language, structure makes vulnerability safe. I'm feeling anxious about a client call tomorrow. I don't want you to worry. I've prepped the notes, and I'll follow up afterward. Could you just hear me out for a minute? I need to tell you something important. I'm worried about money right now. I'm going to make 2 calls tomorrow. 1 to our accountant and 1 to my client. Can I tell you the outcome on Thursday? I don't want you to carry this tonight. I'm taking action. I'm feeling shaky and want to share, but I don't want this to turn into an argument. Can we pause? Do 60 seconds of breathing together? Then I'll speak for 60 seconds and you can ask 1 question. If honesty repeatedly triggers a freeze or major escalation, see a couples therapist to learn co-regulation skills. A neutral coach can model and practice the safe share protocol until it feels natural. Men aren't between a rock and a hard place. They're being asked to learn a new communication skill set. Men are not taught to do this, and obviously have to recognize this is a skill set they need to have to preserve a long-term relationship. It's doable. It takes a few predictable rituals, some rehearsal, and shared agreements about scope and safety. Honesty doesn't have to be brutal. It can be honest and safe. When done with structure, even in men who do not have a high emotional intelligence, as long as they recognize the importance of this practice. Again, the safe phrases are, we're in this together. I'm on it. I'll take these steps. Thank you for listening. That helps me feel calmer. I don't want you to carry this tonight. So, is this a lot of work? Yes, but it can become a task you just do, like breathing, because without it, suffocation is inevitable. Given humanity no longer requires couples to come together out of survival needs, we are being asked to evolve our romantic relationships so they are heart-centered, and if we follow our hearts, the opportunity for a romantic relationship to survive can be a reality.